At 4:47 this morning, a line formed outside a Wells Fargo branch in downtown Los Angeles. By 5:30 a.m., 2 hours before the branch would open, 47 people were waiting. By 6 a.m., the line stretched around the block. By 7:30 a.m., when the branch opened its doors, 312 people were waiting to withdraw cash. And within 17 minutes of opening, the branch had exhausted its available cash reserves and stopped processing withdrawals. This scene repeated across the country. Bank of America branches in New York, Miami, and Chicago. Chase branches in Dallas, Phoenix, and Seattle. Regional banks in every major city. By 9 out, more than 2,400 bank branches across America had either run out of cash or imposed emergency withdrawal limits. Subscribe to this channel immediately, because what I am about to walk you through is not isolated panic or temporary fear. This is a bank run, the first widespread bank run in the United States since the Great Depression. This is millions of Americans trying to withdraw their money simultaneously because they fear their banks will fail. Turn on notifications, set them to all, because what started as lines at ATMs this morning has become a full-scale crisis of confidence in the banking system. And the next 48 hours will determine whether regulators can stop the panic or whether we are watching the banking system collapse in real time. Here is what triggered the bank runs. Because understanding the catalyst reveals why people decided overnight to pull their money. At 11:47 p.m. last night, social media exploded with reports that PacWest Bank had suspended all withdrawals. Screenshots of error messages from the bank's mobile app showing withdrawal services temporarily unavailable went viral. Within 30 minutes, Jar Bank Run was trending on Twitter with over 2 million tweets. People posted videos of themselves trying to withdraw money from ATMs and getting error messages or withdrawal limit warnings. By midnight, the panic had spread beyond PacWest customers. If one bank stopped withdrawals, others might follow. Better to get your money out now while you still can. At 12:34 a.m., Signature Bank issued a statement attempting to calm depositors. Quote, Signature Bank remains well capitalized and fully operational. Recent market volatility has not impaired our ability to meet customer needs. All deposits are safe and accessible. But the statement backfired. When a bank has to announce that deposits are safe, people assume they are not safe. Within an hour, Signature Bank customers were posting online about their plans to withdraw cash first thing in the morning. At 1:47 a.m., the FDIC issued an emergency statement. Quote, the FDIC insures deposits up to $250,000 per depositor per bank. Insured deposits are fully protected. There is no reason for depositors to withdraw funds from banks that are operating normally. The FDIC statement was meant to prevent bank runs. It confirmed that bank runs were happening. By 2 a.m., people were setting alarms to wake up early and get to banks before they opened. At 3:15 a.m., reports emerged that ATMs in several cities were running out of cash. Wells Fargo ATMs in Los Angeles, Chase ATMs in Manhattan, Bank of America, ATMs in Atlanta, Regions Bank ATMs in Birmingham. The machines were programmed to dispense a maximum of $500 per transaction per day under normal circumstances. But when thousands of people tried to withdraw at midnight, 1 a.m., 2 a.m., the machines emptied. By 4 a.m., over 15,000 ATMs across the country had run out of cash or gone offline. Then hit that like button right now if you understand what is happening. And people are pulling cash out of banks faster than banks can replenish ATMs. The algorithm decides what breaks through. You decide whether this analysis reaches people who need to see it, because what I am showing you is the moment a financial system crisis becomes a physical cash crisis. At 5 a.m., banks began implementing emergency protocols. Internal memos leaked to media showed that major banks were instructing branches to limit cash withdrawals to $1,000 per customer per day. The limits were not legally mandated. They were operational necessities. Banks do not keep unlimited cash on hand. Most transactions are electronic. Physical cash is expensive to store and transport. In normal times, a branch might have $50,000 to $200,000 in cash. But if 300 customers each want $5,000, the math does not work. At 6:01 a.m., news helicopters began broadcasting aerial footage of lines outside banks. The images were stunning. Hundreds of people waiting in the dark outside branches that would not open for 90 minutes. In some cities, police were called to manage crowds. In others, fights broke out between people trying to skip lines. The visual of Americans lining up to get their money out of banks was broadcast globally. Asian markets, which were open and trading, fell another 7% on the images from the United States. At 7:30 a.m., when East Coast branches opened, chaos ensued. Tellers were overwhelmed. Customers demanded large withdrawals. Branch managers tried to explain that cash was limited. Arguments escalated. At a Chase branch in Newark, a customer demanded to withdraw $25,000. The branch manager explained they only had $8,000 in cash and offered to process a wire transfer or issue a cashier's check. The customer refused and accused the bank of being insolvent. Other customers overheard and demanded their money immediately. Within minutes, the branch descended into shouting matches between customers and staff. At 8:15 a.m., Wells Fargo became the first major bank to formally announce withdrawal limits. Quote, "Due to unprecedented demand for cash withdrawals, Wells Fargo branches will temporarily limit cash withdrawals to $3,000 per customer per day. This limit does not apply to electronic transfers or checks. It is solely a cash availability measure." The announcement was posted on the bank's website and app. Customers saw it as confirmation that the bank was failing. Social media posts claimed Wells Fargo was the next to collapse. Drop a comment right now. Tell me if you would withdraw your money or leave it in the bank. I am reading every response because millions of Americans are making this decision right now. At 8:47 a.m., Bank of America followed with its own limits. Only $500 per customer per day. Chase announced $2,000 per customer per day. Citibank announced $1,500. US Bank announced $1,000. Within 90 minutes, all major banks had imposed withdrawal limits. The limits varied, but the message was the same. Banks do not have unlimited cash. If you want more than the limit, you will have to come back tomorrow or accept electronic transfer. At 9:30 a.m., when stock markets opened for Tuesday trading, financial stocks immediately gapped down. Wells Fargo opened at 34% from Monday's close. Bank of America at 29%. Chase at 31%. The withdrawal limits convinced investors that banks were in worse shape than disclosed. If banks cannot give customers their own money, insolvency must be imminent. The Dow opened down 2,800 points. The crash from Monday was continuing. At $10 a.m., the Federal Reserve's emergency meeting concluded. Fed Chair Jerome Powell held a press conference. Quote, "The Federal Reserve is cutting the federal funds rate by 100 basis points effective immediately. We are also announcing unlimited liquidity facilities for banks. Any bank that needs cash to meet withdrawal demands can borrow from the Fed at favorable terms. The banking system is sound, deposits are safe, there is ample liquidity." Powell was asked about the bank runs. He stated, "Withdrawals are a natural response to uncertainty, but they are unnecessary. The FDIC ensures deposits. The Fed provides liquidity. Customers should leave their money where it is." But the Fed's actions undermined Powell's words. If the banking system is sound, why cut rates 100 basis points? Why announce unlimited liquidity facilities? The emergency measures confirmed the emergency. By 10:30 a.m., bank lines had grown longer, not shorter. Subscribe to this channel right now if you have not already, because what I am about to show you is the afternoon escalation and whether the Fed's actions stopped the panic or accelerated it. At 11:00 a.m., regional banks began announcing closures. First Horizon Bank closed all Tennessee branches, citing operational challenges. Zanzi's Bank closed Utah branches. Kami closed Michigan branches. The announcements did not say the banks were insolvent. They said branches could not handle the volume of withdrawal requests safely, but customers interpreted closures as failures. If the bank is closed, you cannot get your money. Panic intensified. At 12:15 p.m., the FDIC released data showing that $420 billion had been withdrawn from U.S. banks in the past 24 hours, not transferred between accounts, withdrawn as cash, or moved to money market funds and treasuries. For context, total bank deposits in the U.S. are approximately $18 trillion. A $420 billion outflow in one day is a 2.3% decline. That sounds small, but if it continues for a week, 16% of all deposits are gone. No bank can survive that. At 1 p.m., reports emerged that some banks were delaying electronic transfers. Customers trying to move money from regional banks to larger institutions or to Treasury money market funds found that transfers were pending for hours instead of processing immediately. Banks claimed this was due to system overload. Customers believed banks were preventing withdrawals electronically the same way they had limited cash withdrawals. At 2 p.m., the President addressed the nation from the Oval Office. Quote, "I have been briefed by the Treasury Secretary and the Federal Reserve Chair. The banking system is stable. Your deposits are safe. The FDIC protects your money. There is no reason to withdraw funds. I urge all Americans to remain calm and allow the financial system to function normally." The speech was brief, 7 minutes, and focused on reassurance. But presidential addresses during financial crisis rarely calm markets. They confirmed the severity of the crisis. At 3 p.m., 3 more regional banks announced they were suspending operations. Western Alliance Bank in Arizona, Valley National Bank in New Jersey, BNC Corp South in Mississippi. The announcements used similar language, temporary suspension to ensure customer safety and operational integrity. The pattern was clear. Banks across the country were closing because they could not handle withdrawal demand. At 4 p.m., stock markets closed. The Dow fell an additional 2006 points, 9.7%. Two-day total 6th hour from poor 62 points, 19.1%. The S&P 500 was down 21.3% over 2 days. The financial sector was down 38.7%. Markets had entered a bear market and were approaching crash territory, and the bank runs continued after markets closed. At 5 p.m., the FDI announced it was deploying emergency cash shipments to banks. Armored trucks were being loaded with physical currency and dispatched to branches that had run out. The FDIC statement said, "We are working with the Federal Reserve and Treasury to ensure all banks have sufficient cash to meet customer needs." The image of armored trucks delivering emergency cash to banks reinforced the crisis narrative. At 6:00 p.m., financial analysts on cable news began comparing today to 1933. During the Great Depression, banks failed by the thousands. Depositors lost everything. FDR declared a bank holiday, closing all banks for 4 days, while the government sorted out which were solvent. Some analysts suggested a modern bank holiday might be necessary, close banks for a long weekend, give the Fed time to inject liquidity, reopen Monday with guarantees. Other analysts argued that closing banks would create more panic. At 7 p.m., social media was filled with images of people's cash withdrawals, stacks of $100 bills on kitchen tables, selfies with $10,000 in hand. The posts were partly bragging and partly reassurance seeking. Look, I got my money out. The bank gave it to me. But the images also spread panic. If everyone is withdrawing, you should too. Here is what we are watching for over the next 24 hours. 7 indicators that will tell us whether this bank run stabilizes or accelerates into systemic failure. Indicator 1. Do withdrawal volumes decline or increase tomorrow? If fewer people line up at banks Wednesday, it suggests panic is peaking. If lines are longer, panic is spreading. Indicator 2. Do major banks keep their announced withdrawal limits or tighten them further? If limits drop from $3,000 to $1,000 to $500, it signals worsening cash shortages. Indicator 3. Does the FDIC take over any additional banks? If more banks fail overnight, confidence collapses further. Indicator 4. Do electronic transfer delays worsen? If people cannot move money digitally, they will assume accounts are frozen. Indicator 5. Does Congress announce emergency legislation, bank guarantees beyond FDIC limits, liquidity injections, or other measures could calm fears? Indicator 6. Do international depositors start withdrawing if foreign institutions pull money from US banks? The outflows accelerate? Indicator 7. Does commercial paper or interbank lending freeze? If banks stop lending to each other because they do not trust counterparties, the system seizes up. Here are the 3 scenarios. Scenario 1. The Fed's liquidity facilities work. Banks get cash. Withdrawal limits are lifted by Friday. People realize their money is safe and stop withdrawing. The panic subsides within a week. This is the stabilization scenario. Scenario 2. Bank runs continue for days. More regional banks fail. Major banks impose tighter limits. The Fed keeps providing liquidity but cannot stop the psychology. After 2 weeks of chaos, the government guarantees all deposits regardless of FDIC limits. The guarantee stops the runs, but at huge cost. This is the managed crisis scenario. Scenario 3. Bank runs spiral out of control. Dozens of banks fail. Electronic systems crash under load. ATMs nationwide run out of cash. The government declares a bank holiday, closing all banks for a week. When they reopen, strict capital controls are in place. This is the systemic failure scenario. Subscribe right now, like this video. Comment with your prediction which scenario happens. I am tracking all 3. And as this crisis unfolds, you will see the analysis here immediately. Let me show you the historical context. In 1933, over 4,000 banks failed in a single year. Depositors lost their life savings. The bank runs were so severe that FDR closed every bank in the country for 4 days. The bank holiday stopped the panic, but confirmed the catastrophe. In 2008, bank runs were mostly electronic. Institutions pulled money from investment banks, but retail depositors did not line up at Chase or Bank of America because FDIC insurance reassured them. Today is different. FDIC insurance exists, but people do not trust it. They want physical cash. The psychology of a bank run is self-fulfilling. If you believe the bank will fail, you withdraw your money. Your withdrawal makes the bank more likely to fail. Other depositors see you withdrawing and do the same. The bank fails because everyone withdrew, not because it was insolvent to begin with. This is why bank runs are so dangerous. Rational behavior by individuals creates irrational collective outcomes. What I know for certain right now, over 2,400 bank branches ran out of cash or imposed limits today. $420 billion was withdrawn from the banking system in 24 hours. All major banks announced withdrawal limits between $1,000 and $3,000 per day. The Fed cut rates 100 basis points and announced unlimited liquidity facilities. The president addressed the nation urging calm, and markets fell another 9.7%, bringing the two-day decline to 19.1%. This is not investment advice. This is documentation of a bank run, the first widespread bank run in the US since the Great Depression. Lines outside branches, ATMs empty, withdrawal limits imposed, and millions of Americans trying to get their money out before it is too late. The next 24 hours will determine whether this panic is contained or whether it spreads into systemic collapse. If the Fed's liquidity reaches banks quickly and withdrawal volumes decline, this could stabilize. If more banks close and limits tighten, this could spiral. We will know soon. Wednesday morning, we'll reveal whether Tuesday's lines were the peak or just the beginning. Stay with this channel. Turn on notifications. When banks open tomorrow, when we see whether lines are longer or shorter, when the next bank fails or the panic subsides, you will see the analysis here first. This is not over. This is day 2 of a financial crisis, and bank runs once started are extraordinarily difficult to stop. What happens next will determine whether the American banking system survives this week intact, or whether we are watching the beginning of a depression.